Good morning. Subcommittee on Defense will come to order. We have a number of members that are going to be straggling in. There's some various markups up, so I apologize for that. But to keep everybody on time, we'll go ahead and begin the subcommittee hearing. Today, the subcommittee will convene for an open budget hearing to receive testimony on the National Guard and Reserve Forces. We're pleased to be joined by our witnesses, General Stephen Nordhaus, Chief of the National Guard Bureau, Lieutenant General Robert Harder, Chief of the Army Reserve and Commanding General, U.S. Army Reserve Command, Rear Admiral Lower Half Richard S. Lofgren, Acting Chief of the Navy Reserve, Lieutenant General Leonard Anderson, Commander of the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve, and Lieutenant General John Healy, Chief of the Air Force Reserve. A warm welcome to you all, and thank you for your years of distinguished service. I want to congratulate Lieutenant General Healy on his upcoming retirement this summer. The men and women of the National Guard and Reserves play a critical role in supporting our national security efforts at home and abroad. They sustain peace and respond to crisis, whether managing California wildfires or strengthening the international relationships through the State Partnership Program. The Department's counter-drug program remains a key priority of mine, and the work done through the National Guard Counter-Drug Program and National Guard Counter-Drug Schools program continues to have an incredible impact on our communities. Our military force structure depends on an ability of Guard and Reserves to surge when called. We ask a lot of them, particularly this past year, as demonstrated by their role in Operation Epic Fury. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the Guardsmen and Reservists, as well as all service members who have made the ultimate sacrifice serving our country in this conflict. With heightened requirements, they're tasked with balancing both a civilian career and their military service. It's important our Guard and Reserves are properly resourced and that we continue to support them and their families. In fiscal year 2027, for the first time, the President's budget request includes funding for the National Guard and Reserve Equipment account. The committee has long supported the Guard and Reserves here, and we look forward to hearing more about how this change will impact your modernization efforts. I'd also like to hear from all of you on how the components you're thinking about on modernization, current capability gaps, areas where Congress can be helpful, and additionally, the Guard and Reserves require proper facilities to address growing mission requirements. I look forward to hearing more about the conditions of your facilities and the resource needs for your services. I now recognize the distinguished ranking member, Ms. McCollum, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Thank you all for appearing before the subcommittee. And I'd like to reflect the statements made by my chair and some of the things that he has said about the work that you do. I want to also expend a special thanks to Lieutenant General Healy. 36 years of service, greatly appreciated, and we know your family served alongside of you. Thank you, sir. I want to begin by acknowledging, as the chair did, the loss of our 13 service members in the Middle East, several who were reservist and National Guard personnel. But I'll take a moment to just reflect on the service of Master Sergeant Nicole Amore of White Bear Lake, Minnesota. I appreciate the way the Army and the Reserve managed to get a very special person home for the funeral. It was so important for the family. Thank you very much for your work in making sure that it happened. And I know the Reserve and the Guard back in Minnesota are working together to support the family as well, the VFW and American Legion. Know that we're all deeply grateful for your service. Our National Guard and Reserve components are called upon to support a variety of critical missions, including humanitarian missions, overseas operations, and the increase to support the Southwest Border Mission, and the Guard in particular, the state partnership programs through many activities. Each reserve unit is truly an operational partner with their active component. This is the first time in the administration's fiscal 2027 budget includes funding for the National Guard and Reserve Equipment account, an account that Congress normally provided the funding for. So I think we're making some progress, Mr. Chair. Thank you for all your work on that. Unfortunately, we do not yet have the supporting documents from the administration to understand the details of the request. So I'm concerned that the division of funds in this account may leave some of the reserve components lacking the equipment they so desperately need to properly execute their missions. In the past, this account was dynamic, look at each of the components and their needs, especially for their future missions. So I would appreciate each of you sharing with the subcommittee what these funds will be used for and whether your modernization priorities are being met by the budget request. I'm also concerned about the status of readiness for some of the forces, and I'll tell you why. Each of you has described the work of the reserve components that work hand in glove with your active duty counterparts. We know that firsthand, and we see it when we're in theater. However, picking up waste in the District of Columbia does not prepare anyone for conflicts that could arise in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Given the Supreme Court's decision of December 23rd, which left in place a lower court decision to prevent the administration from deploying the National Guard to Illinois, I'm hopeful that we will not see any additional unnecessary deployments of our military personnel in U.S. city streets. I was curious about the $216 million in the budget for the National Guard Reaction Force. This is supposed to respond to incidents requiring defense support for civil authorities. General Nordis, I'd like to better understand the use of this funding and how it will be chosen and why it's necessary after the Supreme Court's November decision. Given the announcement of the number of troops still deployed on the southern border mission, I would also like to better understand how it will continue to impact the readiness of these units and how their missions may be impacting morale and retention. And finally, I'd like to understand the impact of the civilian workforce reductions in last year. What is now being done by the Guard and Reserve components to compensate for the civilian personnel cuts? And what does it do to impact their ability to train? Serving your country on top of managing a civilian job, in many cases supporting a family, is one of the highest forms of service. You are truly putting country above self with the people that you are representing today with your seats at the table. Thank you all for your efforts, and I look forward to a productive dialogue.
Thank you. I think we're going to have buttons here. Several more members coming in shortly. But we're going to now begin with our witness testimony. Without objection, your full written testimony will be placed in the record. General Nordhaus, we begin with you for a brief summary of your remarks. You're recognized.
Thank you. Before I provide my opening remarks, I ask that we remember, too, our fallen service members from across the Joint Force who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. They will always be remembered. Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and esteemed members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the strength of your locally based, globally engaged National Guard. I thank the 54 Adjutants General and Senior Enlisted Leader John Raines here with me today for their counsel. Moreover, I want to thank you, Congress, for your support that underpins everything we do, ensuring a stronger and more secure tomorrow. It's an honor to represent 435 soldiers and airmen of the National Guard. Today, over 41,000 Guardsmen are engaged worldwide, securing our homeland and supporting every combatant commander around the globe. Your National Guard has had a remarkable year defined by scale and simultaneity of operations. We are powered by our core advantage, the citizen, soldier, and airman. They combine the warrior ethos with civilian-acquired skills, creating an organization that is as innovative as it is lethal, a force that is community-based and engaged worldwide. Defending the homeland is the Department of War's #1 priority. This is the National Guard's foundational mission, our dual mission, serving the primary combat reserve of the Army and the Air Force while also serving as the military first responders in domestic crisis. This is a challenge that we proudly accept. Without hesitation, during Operation Midnight Hammer and Epic Fury, the National Guard crews delivered decisive blows to Iran in lockstep with our joint force partners. In Operation Absolute Resolve, the National Guard fought against narco-terrorism, and daily we responded in the homeland, totaling 2.4 million hours of direct support to our fellow citizens. Your National Guard is an indispensable return on investment for America. We represent 20% of the joint force, yet we operate on less than 4% of the department's budget. Our decisive capabilities are only possible in our citizen soldiers and airmen when we are trained on modernized equipment and fully interoperable with our joint force. To sustain strategic dominance, we must modernize concurrently with our services to aggressively outpace and overmatch tomorrow's threats with robust investments today. This year, I remain laser-focused on sharpening our fighting edge to increase our Guardsmen' readiness and bolster our capabilities for our core missions for homeland, warfighting, and partnerships. We must train and modernize in lockstep with the active components. This requires sufficient and predictable resources in flying hours, weapon system sustainment, facilities sustainment, base operations support, and in GRIA. When we use these resources to serve our citizens in state active duty, current policy sends these funds back to the Treasury. We ask your support in restoring that readiness directly back to our formations. Our warfighters are our most critical asset, and to support their service, we must enact duty status reform and compensate equal work with equal pay and benefits. And it is imperative that our warfighters are supported by a modernized and properly resourced full-time force. The strength of our citizen soldiers and airmen is amplified through a network of partnerships which begins in hometowns and reaches across the globe. The jewel of this effort is the State Partnership Program, which connects the department with nearly 60% of the world's country at merely 1% of the theater security cooperation budget. Your help with flexible multi-year budget authority will allow us to sustain the pace of these highly effective engagements. While threats are unpredictable, our readiness is not. We are an indispensable part of the joint force, built to respond with speed, power, and precision. We are stronger together because we are integrated at every level. In closing, I want to again thank this committee for your unwavering support that ensures a secure tomorrow for all Americans. Let us continue to support and pray for our warfighters in harm's way. We stand by them and their families and are thankful for their service. We will always keep our promise to the nation and to our citizens to be always ready and always there. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, General. General Harder, you're now recognized for your remarks.
Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. On behalf of Command Sergeant Major Greg Betty and the more than 180,000 soldiers and civilians of your Army Reserve, thank you for the support of our warrior citizens and their families. For just 6% of the total Army budget, the Army Reserve provides over half of the Army's maneuver support forces, including the majority of theater-level medical, engineer, and sustainment units, and more than 95% of the bulk distribution fuel capacity in support of the Joint Force. You go, we go. That's my message to my active duty teammates. Right now, nearly 9,000 Army Reserve soldiers are deployed supporting Army and Joint Force requirements both at home and around the globe, to include support of Operation Epic Fury and operations on our southern border. Our soldiers are in the fight. To keep pace with emerging threats and to prepare for large-scale combat operations, or LSCO, we are transforming. The foundation of this transformation is our shift to Geographic Mission Command, a model that replaces a C2 structure built for predictable GWAT deployments with a geographic alignment that better supports readiness for large-scale combat operations. Additional transformation efforts include aligning Army Reserve units with active formations to drive integration and placing key equipment forward in Europe and the Pacific, training and operating as we will fight. To ensure our soldiers and units remain ready, I ask for your help in 3 key areas. First, predictable funding. Continuing resolutions and government shutdowns have huge readiness impacts, and the part-time nature of our force makes missed training days nearly impossible to recover. Second, your continued support of our OMAR and RPA funding. In a major conflict, more than 35,000 Army Reserve soldiers are required within the first 60 days. We must be ready. Third, continued support of the much-appreciated National Guard and Reserve Equipping Account, or NGREA, which allows for flexible procurement of critical equipment. On 7 March of this year, my Command Sergeant Major and I were on the tarmac in Dover, Delaware, greeting our 6 fallen Army Reserve heroes as they returned home from the CENTCOM AOR. And Congressman McCollum, thank you for being there, your support of Nicole and her family and our whole Army Reserve enterprise. More than 30 Army Reserve soldiers were injured in that, or wounded in that same attack. We honor their sacrifice, and it affirms our resolve to ensure every Army Reserve soldier receives counter-drone equipment and training at pace with the Army and Joint Force. To that end, we've dedicated nearly 1/3 of our NGRIA appropriation to counter-UAS systems and will continue to invest in these life-saving technologies. In closing, while we are your Army Reserve, we are not a force in reserve. We are in the fight. The resources you provide are critical to ensuring the young men and women of your Army Reserve stay combat ready. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. Admiral Lofgren, you're now recognized for your remarks.
Good morning, Chair Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and distinguished members of this committee. For 111 years, the Navy Reserve has provided a critical strategic depth for the fleet and the joint force. When our nation calls, we answer, ready, lethal, and all in to fight and win today. We are building the Navy of the future and defining the next era of American sea power. Today, we are resilient, agile, globally present, and a combat-credible force that is fully integrated into the Navy's mission. With me today is our Force Master Chief, Nikki Rios, a tireless advocate for our sailors and their families. Force and I thank you for the opportunity to address this committee on behalf of our incredible Navy Reserve sailors. Over the past couple months in support of Operation Epic Fury, our logistics support wing, flying the C-40 and C-130 aircraft, have evacuated over 2,800 personnel, including families, out of harm's way and demonstrated critical aerial refueling capabilities for our Navy while supporting carrier strike group logistics. These same squadrons have delivered thousands of pounds of critical cargo and tactical airlift support to Southcom, protecting our homeland and safely relocating our teams out of the path of Hurricane Melissa. When our nation and our fleet calls, the Navy Reserve answers, delivering logistics when and where they're needed. Your support for the C-130 Juliets in the President's budget will ensure we can continue to answer that call with the capability and capacity our nation requires. Our North Star is clear. We are unambiguously focused on warfighting readiness. Today, 14,000 of our 59,000 Navy Reserve sailors are on active duty orders, serving in every area of responsibility. Our sailors are deployed 24/7, 365, restoring peace through strength while advancing the foundry, the fleet, and how we fight. We continue to modernize our force and align our resources to warfighting priorities, ensuring that we are ready to fight and win today, tomorrow, and well into the future. Our most significant contribution in the nation's defense and the very foundation of our deterrence posture is our people. A lethal, ready, and resilient force is not built of steel and circuits alone. It's forged from the talent, the training, and the motivation of our sailors. Therefore, I ask for your full support in funding the RPN, the OMNR, and NGRIA appropriations at the President's budget levels. These accounts enable our force to recruit and retain the very best that America has to offer through pay, bonuses, and benefits. And like you, our talent lives in your communities. To ensure they are always prepared, RPN provides the travel budget to get our people to where the fighting forces train. NGRIA affords the Navy Reserve agility in rapidly procuring and implementing equipment solutions that provide parity with active duty equipment and fill critical mission capabilities. Our investment in our sailors is critical to enabling a mobilization and combat-ready force. Every drill weekend, every exercise, every mobilization must sharpen our edge and must be matched by investment in modern equipment. To this end, we are posturing our force to deliver advanced, combat-focused capabilities that the fleet demands. Replacing our aging C-130 Tango fleet with a modern KC-130 Juliet Super Hercules aircraft meets the fleet's demand to enable contested logistics and sustain maritime power. As I've shared with many of you, our C-130 fleet, operated exclusively in the Navy Reserve, is the Navy's only long-range intra-theater airlift of oversized cargo. Last year, the Fleet Logistics Support Wing moved over 72,000 passengers and 22 million pounds of cargo, delivering critical munitions, repair parts, personnel, and fuel, sustaining carrier strike groups in every theater around the globe. Our C-130 squadrons are in the fight from the first minute of the first hour of the first day. However, this fleet is aging and lacks modern survivability and communications equipment needed for contested logistics environments. We are grateful for the strong bipartisan alignment on this priority. Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and the members of the committee, thank you for your continued support of the Navy Reserve and the sailors, civilians, and families who make our mission possible. Our commitment is clear: to enhance the fleet's lethality and warfighting readiness by delivering decisive capabilities at the point of need. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. General Anderson, you're now recognized for your remarks.
Good morning, Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Commandant of the Marine Corps about your Marine Corps Reserve. I am joined here today by my incoming Command Senior Enlisted Leader, Sergeant Major Patrick Fay. The Marine Corps Reserve is a critical component of our nation's defense. We are not a strategic reserve held for distant crises. We are a globally engaged, operational force that provides the Marine Corps with strategic depth and the ability to augment and reinforce the active component on a moment's notice. Our relevance is defined by our readiness. Providing combat-ready units to global operations, the Reserve seamlessly integrated into the total force. In fiscal year 2025, we activated Reserve Marines for requirements across 5 combatant commands. Today, we have Marines activated in every geographic combatant command to include combat operations in CENTCOM. These deployments are not just a measure of our readiness, but it is how we build it. We are growing a more capable, combat-seasoned reserve force prepared for high-end conflict. This level of readiness and modernization is directly enabled by your support. We thank this subcommittee for your continued support, especially through the National Guard and Reserve Equipment account. For the Marine Corps Reserve, NGREA is not just a funding line. It is a warfighting requirement and a primary tool that enables our modernization. These funds allow us to field the modern platforms and systems our Marines that need to train as they fight. With a 99% execution rate across recent fiscal years, the Marine Corps Reserve has proven its ability to execute with discipline and speed while maintaining our service's clean audit for the last 3 years. Reserve readiness requires modern infrastructure. The Marine Corps Reserve occupies 148 reserve training centers across 47 states, and the average condition of our portfolio is rated as poor. While we aggressively pursue efficiencies through programs like Facility Sustainment Restoration and Modernization and Military Construction Navy Reserve to slow this decline, the disparity between our requirements and resources is growing. Continued support for our military construction and sustainment accounts is essential to provide safe, secure, and modern facilities where our Marines train. Because at the heart of our success are the individual Marines, sailors, and families who serve with unwavering dedication. They are the foundation of our readiness. With your continued support, I'm confident that the Marine Corps Reserve will remain what our nation expects us to be: an elite, combat-ready force prepared to answer the call any climb and place. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. General Healy, you're now recognized for your remarks.
Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, distinguished members of the subcommittee, it's an honor to be here today one last time with my senior enlisted advisor, Chief Master Sergeant Israel Nunez, representing 67,000 Air Force Reserve Airmen. We are a strategic advantage and a cost-effective investment, not a backup force by any shape or means. Our airmen's unmatched experience provided the strategic depth to deter our adversaries. Our partnership builds interoperability with our allies and partners, and our recent surge proves we are always ready and accessible to respond to any crisis in less than 72 hours. This is the Reserve advantage. When properly resourced, we're a cost-effective solution for the Department of the Air Force in all mission areas. We operate our installations 28 days a month on just 25% of our force, delivering mission-ready airmen for only 30 cents on the dollar. Fiscal year 25's closeout was our best on record. Your support and our data-driven tools enable precise resource management and risk-informed decisions. The Air Force Reserve is efficient, it's experienced, it's accessible, and most of all, it's lethal. We need your support to maintain this advantage. 77% of our fleet is over 39 years old. Supply chain shortages threaten aircraft availability, and a $1.5 billion backlog means requirements are rapidly outpacing resources. INGREA is critical to the modernization, agility, and maximization of our force and our purchasing power. I look forward to the discussion on the change from dedicated congressional appropriation to inclusion into the President's budget. We're currently hollowing out our nation's future combat capability through disproportionate divestment. Over the FYDP, the Air Force Reserve is projected to lose 20.1% of our inventory, a significant imbalance compared to the other components. Our number one priority has always been and will remain concurrent and proportional fielding of advanced aircraft. As our crews prove their value right now in Operation Epic Fury, disproportionate divestment is an unnecessary risk to national security. That security hinges upon our seamless interoperability with our allies and partners. Recent operations have proven this is an urgent necessity, not a choice. Now in its second year, our Reserve and Allies Partner Program continues to build interoperability. While operating on a near zero budget, we've conducted 71 strategic engagements last year, including formal partnership agreements with the United Kingdom and France, while establishing new security cooperation pathways with the Netherlands and the Philippines. Prioritizing this program is a cost-effective investment that enables our allies to share the burden of strategic deterrence. Finally, I'd like to say thank you this last opportunity for your continued support of the Air Force Reserve and our warfighters. I'd also like to thank my wife, Kathy, with me today, whose unwavering support for the men and women and the families of the Air Force Reserve, and to me, deserves a note in this record. Thank you again. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General, and thank you. This is your last hearing. I'm sure you're going to miss them a whole lot.
Still mark it on the calendar for next
There
year.
you go. With that, I'd like to recognize the Chairman of the full committee, Chairman Cole.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to apologize to you and our guests for being a little late. The ranking member and I were elsewhere discharging our duties, and we got here as quick as we could. But again, we apologize for any inconvenience. Again, I want to thank you, Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum. I want to welcome our distinguished witnesses and thank you all for your dedicated service with the National Guard and Reserve components of our force. Let me begin by expressing gratitude to the men and women of the National Guard and the Reserve. You have the difficult task of balancing both civilian and military life. This unique structure gives us an adaptable force ready to respond. Excuse me. Whether it's deployments abroad, or disaster response, or helping secure our borders, you are vital to our national defense and our communities. I can't thank the units of the Oklahoma National Guard enough for their swift response and assistance every time a tornado strikes our communities. From the deadly F5 tornadoes that struck my own hometown Moore twice many years ago to the most recent tornadoes struck the town of Sulphur in my district, the search and rescue operations and hands-on assistance provided by these men and women of the National Guard truly encompassed what it means to serve. I'm proud to say that we're continuing to advance regular order, further ensuring large omnibus bills are a thing of the past. Importantly, we will also have the opportunity to evaluate your funding priorities alongside the budget request. Today's hearing is an important forum for you to discuss current readiness, resource constraints, and priorities for our Guard and Reserve components. In just this past year, we've seen clear examples of both the Guard and Reserve components serving as essential force multipliers across a range of missions. We owe it to you to ensure that federal funding reflects your operational demands and the critical dual role that you serve. I also look forward to hearing about the ongoing challenges with recruitment and retention, along with efforts to modernize equipment and facilities. We require a candid dialogue about your requirements and how Congress can be a true partner in strengthening our Guard and Reserve forces. Quote, always ready, always there. It's not just a motto, but a promise you have proven time and time again that you take seriously and fulfill to the letter. Whether you're in Oklahoma or serving abroad, our Guardsmen and Reservists deserve to know we have your back. Again, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you, and I want to thank particularly our witnesses for their service and their distinguished, efforts to help our country and keep it safe and secure. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now I'd like to recognize the chairman or the ranking member of the full committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member McCollum, and a really big thank you to our witnesses for testifying here today. There's a lot of brass here. I'm just, it's not intimidated though, so. Let me just address a few topics this morning. The first is the manner in which our National Guard troops are being treated. I have to extend my thoughts to the entire Guard community, and especially the families of National Guardsman Sarah Beckstrom, who was killed in a senseless act of gun violence, and National Guardsman Andrew Wolf, who was seriously injured. This should never have happened, and the individual responsible must be punished according to the law. Since August of last year, the National Guard has been deployed to Washington, D.C. at the direction of the President in what I view as a political stunt that has gone on for far too long. The President has the National Guard patrolling around the nation's capital, directing tourists, picking up trash. To be clear, these guardsmen have been nothing but professional since they were sent here. My problem is that they should not have to do this. It is not a responsible use of resources. The National Guard are crucial to supporting military operations around the world and assisting with emergency response at home. When a severe storm devastates a community, it is the National Guard who respond with tents, blankets, medical equipment, food, and water. They are often the first sign of hope for many who have just endured perhaps the worst ordeal of their lives. Guard forces are also routinely deployed to support combat operations overseas. Roughly 500 members of the Connecticut National Guard are deployed in the Middle East, and I am so grateful for their service to our country, and I want to make sure that they have what they need and that they are safe. In his budget, President Trump requested an additional $605 million for continued National Guard deployments in Washington, D.C. And news reports indicate that he intends to keep the National Guard in the Capitol until he leaves office. Every day and every dollar spent keeping the National Guard here takes away from where they are needed elsewhere. We should not be fabricating crises just to keep the Guard busy. In addition to the National Guard, please let me take a moment to express my appreciation for our reserve forces as well. The reserves play a crucial role in our armed forces. They provide critical logistical mobility and nuclear mission support. 9 reserve service members have lost their lives during the war with Iran. 13 servicemen have been killed. 9 of them were reservists. I offer my deepest condolences to their families and express a profound sadness at what is a tragic loss. It is critical that we in the Congress provide the resources necessary to support the men and women of our National Guard and Reserve forces. I look forward to hearing your answers to our questions today. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the ranking member. Now we'll go to questions. We'll hopefully get around to everybody, so we'll limit it to 5 minutes. I'll start with myself. First, to make a comment, we all, as I've heard the comments about predictable funding, and I know that's important to all of you. And I think, say with support on both sides here that none of us like continuing resolutions. And so we're going to work hard with the full committee chairman here and the ranking member who worked very hard together to make sure that we have that predictable funding and that we hopefully can avoid continuing resolutions. One of the issues that's been important, I live on a border state of California, that's been extremely important is the counter-drug program, and I appreciate the impact it's had in our communities. Congress provided $305 million for the National Guard counter-drug program in fiscal year 26 and provide critical funding for training and operations. And we've also provided an additional $30 million for the National Guard counter-drug school program, provide necessary education to support combating drug trafficking efforts. As you know, hundreds of thousands of Americans have died of fentanyl poisoning over the last number of years. It's a horrible poison, as I call it, and this unfortunately has been inflicted upon the American population. So I appreciate what you're all doing. And General Nordhaus, how is the National Guard utilizing these resources to disrupt and degrade illicit drug production to make our communities safer?
Chairman, thank you for the question, and thank Congress holistically for the additional funds in this counter-drug program. Last year, the National Guard counter-drug program took off $15 billion of illicit drugs supporting our law enforcement. Can't imagine how many lives that has saved and families that has been kept together because those drugs have been taken off the street. 69,000 other law enforcement agencies and agents have been trained through the counter-drug school program, which are funded through Congress, so we cannot thank you enough. Each of the states have a counter-drug program, and each year is taken a look at of how they can better it to increase what they're getting after what's in the local area, whether it's fentanyl or other drugs, and how they can work with their local law enforcement agencies. So each year we tune it up, we get better and stronger. The previous year, we took off $13 billion, and last year at $15 billion. So every dollar you give the National Guard, you're getting huge bang for your buck because our guardsmen are professional, they're experienced, they use their civilian skill sets and come into those programs and make us stronger.
Well, thank you. And there's a lot of important missions that you do, but I think this is one right on top of the list, so I appreciate anything you can do to do this. General, again, what priorities do you have in the coming years? We write this budget this year. If you had to pick your top 2 or 3 priorities, what would that be?
Chairman, certainly as we look at foundational readiness accounts, to be an always ready, always there force, and as you heard from the other reserve component chiefs here, we're operational. And when you look at what the National Guard is doing in support of the Joint Force over in Operation Epic Fury, we have to be ready and trained, and the foundational readiness accounts really add to that. So that deals with flying hours, weapon system sustainment, and ops tempo. Also, as we look at modernization, we have to be in modernized equipment, whether it's helicopters or whether it's fighters, tankers, bombers, or mobility aircraft. We have to have those capabilities. Ingria, once again, does an amazing amount that allows us to make sure that we're interoperable across the board with our services. And I know how important you heard all the comments from Ingria, so that would be my initial comments there, Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got two kind of topic questions, and you can get back to me with more information should you choose to. But I want to finish up a little more about what I said in my opening statements about the deployment of the National Guard. So the information that we have is that $605 million for the extended deployment of the National Guard troops for non-military activities for the beautification of Washington, D.C. And I assume those activities will support America as we celebrate 250 years. And so they're here now. We'll have a lot of people visiting. I could see that being of comfort and joy for everyone, having the interaction with our men and women in uniform. However, that celebration is going to end in July. And it's been reported that the Pentagon wants to keep the National Guard troops in through, as the ranking member of the full committee said, through January 2029. That's the end of the president's second term. And that's well beyond the scope of this budget request. So the budget request for $260 million for the National Guard Reactionary Force is also something that this committee's been reading about in the paper to respond to incidents. So General Nordhaus, I have just a few questions for you, and if you have to get back with more information at the committee, truly understand, we look forward to it. How long do you see the deployments where the National Guard law enforcement support role in D.C. Is sustainable? Because that $605 million in the request is all coming at the expense of something else that the National Guard will not be doing. Then regarding the National Guard Reactionary Force, I'd like some more information and detail, and we had a little bit of a discussion in the office, but where is the funding coming from and contained in this budget? So we had a brief discussion in the office. I think you know what I'm going at, but I'm going to ask the Admiral a question first, and then you can both respond. I'll kind of pack it together. So the Guard usually deploys as a group. I've been to many deployments. We have Guard in Kuwait and Djibouti right now. They go. The reserves tend to. I've been during the height of Iraq and Afghanistan. I would watch Marines deploy as one. So you don't usually have you deploy at one, and then when you come home, sometimes you come home alone. You're not even being deployed in the big group. So I just want to acknowledge that. And this leads me to my question to you, Admiral. What is the length of time it takes for a Naval Reserve sailor to replace a sailor on another platform during a time of crisis? You're unique in what you do with the Reserve that way. I know I have a cybersecurity unit in Minnesota, and there's different units that go on. The pilots tend to, because of keeping hours and that, they're all going. But when you have to take one of your sailors and put them physically on a ship, how does that integrate? How long does it take for that unit's activity to fully be cohesive? So my concern is if we need to provide more proper resources in order for the Navy to be successful, especially as we look at what they're doing with this blockade right now, the long deployment of the Ford, we want to make sure that it's seamless for the sailors on board the ship, the one coming in, the one going off, the one serving. I need to learn more about this.
Ranking Member McCollum, thank you for the question. When you look at the mobilizations for your Navy Reserve, really they fit into two different pieces. You've got the operational support and those units that mobilize together as a unit of action. And those can be examples like our SEAL teams that are currently getting deployed, our aviation squadrons, our VR squadrons, our C-130 and C-40 squadrons that are mobilizing as well now together as units of action, as well as our they're constantly refining. Criticality is around both the RPN and the OM&R budgets to be able to fund those at the levels requested for them to continue to hone and refine that edge. So we feel very comfortable that those units of action and those members are ready to go right in the first hour or the first minute.
My question on the Guard.
Ranking Member McCollum, thank you for your question. As we look at the DC Safe and Beautiful, certainly our primary focus is on the safety of our citizens. And as we look at America 250 coming and FIFA, our National Guard will be ready to support in any of those locations through their governors, and then here in DC through the Secretary from that. As we look at our National Guard, we continue to see our service men and women do amazing things in support of the local law enforcement.
Excuse me, sir. It pains me to interrupt you, but my time's limited. And so I asked about the funding contained in the budget for the National Guard Reactionary Force and the request of the $605 million that for what we're doing in DC. That does come at the expense of something else in the line. So what are we not doing?
Ranking Member McCollum, we are working with the department and reimbursements from the department, from DOJ and DHS. We will continue to work with this committee, and we look forward to making sure that we can do all the mission sets that we've been directed to do, and then also make sure that we can provide all the statutory training to the National Guard, because we know how critical it is.
I'd like a detailed breakout of the money and what training is not being done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Cole.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and again, to our witnesses, thank all of you. I, too, have budget concerns and requests, and you might not be in a position to give me a full answer. I certainly understand that, but I'm just going to kind of move down the list here and ask each of you, could you give us a quick overview of the role your component is playing, your respective area, in the current military actions in Iran? And give us some view, because at some point I would expect a supplemental request to come from the administration in this regard, and you certainly need to be part of that supplemental. So insofar as you can, give us some estimate of what sort of impact this has had on your budget to date, It's impossible to know the exact ending of something like this, so I wouldn't expect you to give us anywhere near a complete estimate, but some sense of how much this has impacted you and, you know, what you might be, what we might need to extend to you to make sure that you can continue your operations uninterrupted in the other areas that you're responsible for. So I'll start, General Nordhaus, if I may, with you, and then just kind of move down the line, if that's okay.
Chairman, thank you for the question. As we look at the National Guard, certainly on the Air National Guard, we're 30% of the operational force of the Air Force. And to not get into specifics, we're at least that or above in support of the mission sets over in Epic Fury, whether it's in tankers, fighters, bombers, or mobility aircraft, and then logistics planning, ISR platforms across the board. Our guardsmen are doing amazing work and making sure that we can take the fight to the adversary. But as we look at the budgets, we'll continue to work with you and to bring those forward to make sure that we can continue to do all the mission sets. And I will say also on the Army National Guard side, they're doing amazing work as well on artillery and other things to take the fight to the adversary.
So, I mean, just follow up very quickly. You mentioned 30%, extraordinary burden. Congratulations for discharging that. Would you estimate that, you know, just in general, that's what you would need? Let's just say we notionally had a $100 billion or whatever supplemental, that you would need something in accordance to 30% of the total we would expend for air operations.
Chairman, I'd like to get back to you, but that makes
Fair enough.
sense.
Look, I know this is not a fair question, so, and you can't possibly have the information. But yes, if you can get back to me, that would be helpful. You know, I've seen enough of these things to see sometimes we shortchange the Guard and Reserve. You know, we're asking a lot out of you. When the time comes to get a supplemental, I just want to make sure that what goes in that supplemental adequately covers your needs. So, any information you provide as we progress along be gratefully received. Same question, if I may, to General Harder.
Chairman Cole, thank you for the question on behalf of the Army Reserve. So right now, we have just almost 4,000 young men and women, just a little less, supporting Operation Epic Fury. We are the bulk of sustainment and enabling capacity for the Joint Force, total Army, where we took a reduction from the Army in some of our op-tempo, especially affects our home station training. And we can get you those numbers, upwards of $60 million. That's the one decrement that again, is a little bit hard for us to make up. Our young men and women are getting after it, getting after the home station training, but that's where we always need some support is before we go to the MOB site and before our boots on the ground in theater.
Thank you. Admiral Lofgren.
Yes, sir, Chairman Cole. As far as our troops our sailors rather, that are deployed overseas, the bulk of those sailors are currently flying the C-130s and the C-40s, providing critical resupply, rearming, and refueling for both the carrier strike groups and other aircraft that are in that theater. In addition, we are supplying teams that are doing maritime operations support for Fifth Fleet as well right now. So, and like General Nordhaus, we've got sailors that are engaged in both the cyber warfare and some of the integrated intelligence work as well, sir.
Very good. General Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Predominantly for Marine Forces Reserve, these were planned, budgeted deployments, and they are forward with 31st MU to include civil affairs, to include our light armor reconnaissance teams that are there, and to the ranking members' comment, we also have the individual augmentees that go in with specific skill sets that help CENTCOM. So to get to a specific number for you as far as funding for your Marine Corps Reserve and increased readiness and training, I'd have to get a more specific number back to you. But right now, as we plan in the Marine Corps, we plan across the FIDP. So our deployments for our reserves are planned, and they're already budgeted, so it's a predictable life for our Marine reservists.
Great. And General Healy.
Thanks for the question, sir. With the Air Force Reserve, what we did was close to a miracle. Our contract is 72-hour deployment. We rarely test that. The normal timescale for a predictable deployment cycle is 180 days prior, but we knocked out greater than 3,000 deployers in that 72-hour mark in the form of multiple orders. So if you were to go around to any of the reserve-owned bases right now, whether it be cargo, air refueling, you're not going to see any airplanes there, and you're not going to see any people there. They all moved out already. Greater than 3,000 total from an emergent perspective. But in addition to that, we've also got double that in our expected overseas normal rotational basis as well. So we're fully vested in all the cargo, air refueling, intel, command and control. I'd classify the impact that we're going to have, depending on the length of this, will be in the form of, you know, the standard for a reservist or a guardsman is a week and a month and 2 weeks a year. Well, that money that we typically use for that is not going to get used because they're being used for contingency operations. Likewise, all the aircraft that we typically use for training day in and day out are currently deployed. So there is no opportunity for those back at home that have not deployed to continue with that training. So it's a little more challenging from that perspective. All of our support agencies and non-deployed activities outside of ops and maintenance, there's realistically no impact on it, but we're watching closely the timing and how to manage that money when they do return.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I think, you know, collectively, your testimony really underlines what not every American realizes, how much of our ability to conduct an operation like this really depends on your readiness and what you have at your disposal. And of course, it's not a predictable exercise. You can do the best you can to plan, but none of us knew this was coming, and none of us knew how long it would take, or know how long it will take. So just thank you for your adaptability. Thank you for what you're doing, and please, to yourselves and to the administration, when the time comes to send us a bill, because it certainly will, we need to make sure that your forces are receive what they need for what they've used and what they need in terms of recovery time, retraining, what have you, so that you're ready, God forbid, if we need to call on you again anytime soon. So again, thank each of you for your service. Thank you very much to the men and women that you respectively lead and their service to the country. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. And before I recognize the ranking member, I just want to agree with the chairman that we look forward to receiving the supplemental from the administration. And obviously, there's operational costs that's going to be that we need to recover in this. And I suspect O&M costs and additional costs. So I'm hoping that's reflected in the supplemental. With that, the ranking member, Mr. Lauro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that the Guard still flies over 200 Lima model Blackhawks, and they're scheduled to reach their end of service life in 2032. We have heard that the Army National Guard has validated requirement of 225 Black Hawk aircraft, and for 2027, the budget only requests 1 Black Hawk for the active Army and 0 for the National Guard. At the same time, the budget proposes that the CH-47 Chinook procurement dropped from 11 to 5. The Guard flies both platforms in support of domestic missions every day, performing disaster response, medical evacuation, search and rescue on top of their overseas commitments. I have a question for General Nordhaus and for General Harder on this question. General Nordhaus, can you speak to the Guard's requirement for Black Hawks and whether your current aviation inventory is sufficient to meet mission demands? What do these procurement and modernization reductions mean in practical terms for what the Guard can do and cannot do?
Ranking Member DeLauro, thank you for the question. As we look at the National Guard and work with the Army, our Army aviation is critical across the board for all of our 54 and the mission sets that they do in the homeland and in the warfight. As we look at the oldest Limas, some that we will divest, it's a small percentage that we have to make sure that are double the price to fly, are hard to maintain. And so as we look at bringing in Mike models in transition, some of our Limas to Mikes that cascade down from other compos into the Army National Guard, and then also some Chinooks that come to us.
Right.
And then what we want to do is be able to take that investment into the MV-75,
Right.
that new platform with the Army. And so we feel very nested with General Leneve and Army as we go forward.
Right, but the MV-75 is a ways off. And my question is whether your current aviation inventory is sufficient now to meet mission demands. And what do the procurement and modernization reductions mean in practical terms for what the Guard can or cannot do? Do you have what you need? I mean, I understand what the transitions, but This is now. This is current. The MV-75 is, it's no deployable prototype until the end of next year, probably. So where are you now?
Yes, ma'am, I think we're in an okay spot, but we
Okay.
need to make sure that we continue to bring other mics from the other compos into Army National Guard, make sure that we take the oldest aircraft that are twice as expensive and take that money to be able to put those parts and increase the rates on the mic models and Limas that we do have as we bring new aircraft on in the future.
Well, it seems to me that we have a gap here of, which I think we need to address, and we can't fully address it now, but I think we have a gap in what you need in terms of aviation requirements going forward, especially with what the president's budget looks like in terms of this area. And going from, I know people think that I have, it's parochial because we build the Blackhawks in my district, but you go from what, 24 to 1, Guard gets 0, Chinooks are down. So it seems that we need some real analysis of where all of this is as we move forward. Okay. General Harder, I want to ask about the Army Reserve. The Transformation Initiative proposes eliminating the Army's Reserve's rotary wing capability, raises concerns about retaining qualified aviators and maintaining their expertise at a time when commanders continue to signal demand for aviation support. How is the Army thinking about preserving that capacity, and what risks should we understand here in the Congress?
Well, Ranking Member DeLauro, thanks for that question. So, as you're aware, the Army made the decision to divest of 2 of our brigades. But Congress also put a restriction not to turn in anything, until June. So we have 228 aircraft. We've turned in a few of the older Lima models. We still have all the remaining aircraft, and we're maintaining those aircraft. As you stated, and as we all well know, our pilots are seasoned and qualified. We've developed some models where we would continue to retain those pilots in support of our Compo 1 and Compo 2 teammates. So the Army Reserve right now stands by to support the needs of the nation as directed.
Okay, thank you. Could I do another question, Mr. Chairman, or am I on?
You need additional time?
Okay, yes, if I can, I'll try to be quick. 22 adjutant generals wrote to this committee on April 1st saying the Air Force needs a minimum of 72 new fighters per year just to begin reducing the average age of the fleet, and that cascading legacy aircraft from the active component to the Guard is not recapitalization. They have also noted that 13 of the 24 Air National Guard fighter squadrons remain programmed on F-16 post-block aircraft with no recapitalization plan on record. Yet the budget, again, 2027, requests a total of 38 new fighters, barely half of the reported minimum requirement, and I do not see any of those aircraft specifically designated for Guard or Reserve in the budget documents. Significant gap between what the Reserve components have validated versus what the budget looks like and need to provide. Again, I'll ask both questions at the same time. General Norhouse, current rate, when do the Guard fighter units begin transitioning to modern aircraft? How are you thinking about the path forward for those 13 Air National Guard squadrons still rating recapitalization decisions? General Healy, the Air Force Reserve operates as legacy platforms and faces similar recapitalization challenges. What does a procurement level of 38 fighters per year compared to the 72 identified by the adjutant generals mean for the Air Force Reserve readiness and mission capability over the next 5 years? So I'll start, General Nordhaus.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Your numbers that you talked about there, 13 of the 24 do not have a current plan. We certainly are working rapidly with the Air Force to find out what that fielding plan is in the future. We're currently looking at a couple MOBs, MOB 16 and 17, which would be F-35s, and then the F-15EXs coming to several of our wings in the future. But we need those additional aircraft and, the defense industrial base so that we can have the aircraft that can come into our formation. As we see, fighters are critical. Our fighters were at Epic Fury, Absolute Resolve, Midnight Hammer.
Amen.
And so recapitalizing these Air National Guard fighter units is critical for our nation.
Thank you, General.
Ma'am, you're speaking my language. The last year's comments specifically got after the fact that whether it be Nellis and our aggressor F-16s divested without recapitalization, our Whiteman A-10s currently slated to divest in 27-28 associated with Moody, in addition to our Homestead F-16s with no scheduled recap at this time. So this has been something that I've been trying to push from my end in the Air Force Reserve through the Air Force and with help from Congress when I specifically talk about concurrent proportional fielding of weapon systems. I think there's some positive outlooks with regard to Homestead in the near future and a conversion from F-16 pre-blocks to F-35s. And we're also optimistic that we might have made some headway with regard to Whiteman Air Force Base and the divestment of the A-10s and a possible recapitalization there. It's something that's been since day one, since I came in the job, and it's going to be day 460, day 4 years worth when I exit the job that I'm going to keep asking for this time.
Listen, I appreciate the candor. I'll just make one final comment is, we talk about F-35s, talk about F-16s and the needs for that, but in no way have we talked about Black Hawks and the need for that. I think that's a future conversation and one that I'd like to keep in touch with you on. I look forward to working with you to see that the budget that we are doing reflects that reality of making sure you have the equipment and the modernization and the support to be able to do it with the Guard and the Reserve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
General Lady. And also, I want to point out, we're going to be flying Blackhawks for a long time, and I agree with you. We have to have a smooth transition as we move to the next platform. And also, something we should bring up is the ITIP program, and to re-engine both the Blackhawks and the Apaches to more power, more range, better capabilities, some of the older platforms that we're flying. So that's something we all need to work on to see if we have the suitable funds for that. Judge Carter, recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you for being here. General Harder, the United States Army Reserve is currently operated all over the world, right? Highlighting the vital role of the Army Reserve plays in defense of our nation. Pardon me for my voice. The importance of being manned, trained, and equipped to meet the demands of large-scale combat operations is important. Can you talk to me about your biggest equipment and modernization concerns? I'm sorry about my voice.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for that question. And so, exactly right, sir. As I stated earlier, we're the bulk of the enabling capacity for the Joint Force. So I tell you, events, we continue to work with the Army on modernization of our fleets, bulk petroleum distribution, water purification, obviously all distribution assets, truck formations. But what I'm seeing and I said in my opening comment about leveraging NAGRIA, the ability to have protection capability in our formations. The threat is ubiquitous. Obviously, evidence what happened at the Port of Shuaibah in Kuwait, but we see that everywhere we go, what the enemy can deliver with drones and missiles. And how do we defend ourselves at echelon? This is not an infantry fight, it's everybody's fight. And so what we are looking to invest in the Army Reserve is for our formations, truck companies, water purification, those young men and women have to have the capability to identify, assess, and defend. And so we are investing in that capability. We'll be testing it at our exercise, really in partnership with my Guard teammates in June out at Fort Polk and in Camp Shelby. We've procured some kit using NAGRIA, and we're going to test that. So it's distribution systems, fuel systems, as well as our protection capabilities, sir.
The Guard and Reserve units are mobilizing on short notice. How effective are the current pre-positioned stocks and equipment sets to ensure that they deploy with modern, mission-ready capabilities rather than legacy systems?
Well, sir, again, we're about we get about 1% of the Army's modernization dollars. Not complaining, stating the fact. That's why NAGRIA is so important to us. But what we have been doing is posturing some of our equipment that has been modernized forward. So we've positioned truck maintenance company ammunition formations forward in Europe, and we're doing the same thing in the Indo-PACOM AOR. The Army Reserve is maintaining that so that we can fall in on that modernized equipment should we be asked to deploy and fight in support of the nation.
That's a good idea.
Thank you, sir.
And by the way, there are a lot of people that I see every day that are coming up with solutions for water and other things that look really good. So we'll be looking at that too for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Ms. Capter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to our distinguished guests this morning. Thank you for your service. I'd like to begin my remarks by recognizing the noble service of Captain Seth Koval, Captain Curtis Angst, and Master Sergeant Tyler Simmons from the Ohio Air Guard 121st Air Refueling Wing, who lost their lives over Iran recently. Members should co-sponsor, if they can, House Resolution 1129, honoring these fallen Ohio National Guardsmen. I've served in Congress a long time, and you have served a long time as well. I just wanted to offer an observation. The Department of Defense is the largest in terms of budget capacity in the entire federal government, followed by the Department of Homeland Security. I speak today on behalf of local police and sheriffs and just give you a conundrum. I am concerned about the deployment of federal guardsmen and reservists into the streets of our communities. And I'll speak on behalf of my sheriffs and local police. They say to me, Marcy, does anybody in Washington know that our jails are full of three-quarters of the people in them are mentally ill, and the others are drug addicted and have been arrested for serious crimes. In addition, we also house, as we arrest them, people who are coming from other countries and commit crimes. But in my hometown, the jail is almost half a century old. It's a disaster. They've not been able to have the money to actually rebuild the jail. And the salaries are very different for the individuals who work there, both for the sheriff and for the local police. And the U.S. Department of Justice, which doesn't get the funding of the Department of Defense here in Washington, has some grant programs that can help our local policing. But let me just say, these officers at the local level and these sheriff's deputies know the turf. And I am really concerned about what happened in Minnesota and what could happen in other places and the diminishment of local policing. I was here when Homeland Security was established as a department, and I brought money for our Border Patrol. The Air Guard has the Northern Border Watch in our area, but we have I'm not against Homeland Security. We fund it, but they have big buildings, new vehicles, higher salaries, and our local sheriffs and police are being undervalued. I was recruited to run for this job by an officer who'd been in the military, came home, unfortunately was shot, lost his eye, lost part of his face, and did other things that were extremely valuable to our community. But I'm just saying to you, as you get into meetings at the federal level, be aware that locally what's happening is the diminishment of our policing forces at the local level. And for juveniles, and we have the arrest of many, our juvenile detention facility is a disgrace. And there are no places for the children once they're sentenced. The juvenile detention facility can't hold them all. And the Department of Justice doesn't have the money to actually provide for, I call them repatriation programs, bring these children back to society in a way that they're more whole. So as I look at you and your engagement and what the executive branch asks you to do, I see this withering. Maybe it's different in Texas, maybe it's different in California, I don't know. But locally, all you have to do is just compare the vehicles of Homeland Security to the vehicles of the Sheriff's Department and the vehicles of the Toledo Police, for example, and then look at what they're paid. Look at what they're paid. And I really think there's something creeping forward here that isn't good for our country, and we need to have an equal emphasis or added emphasis on our local policing and our local sheriffs, and they deserve the kind of attention. They have particular knowledge. They live there. And so I just think that there's a real mismatch here, and I wanted to place that on the record. I also wanted to mention that General David Petraeus recently wrote an article and in the Wall Street Journal about the changing nature of modern warfare. And though you won't have time to answer my question orally here, he talked about multi-domain unmanned systems and what Ukraine is teaching us about the nature of modern warfare versus what is happening in the Iranian domain. And I think what he says about mass precision, about AI, about unmanned systems, about sea drones, et cetera, I think there's a lot we have to explore there in terms of how we train our forces to meet this new need. And I wanted you to comment on that, and hopefully there'll be a second round. Thank you, and I yield back.
To the gentlelady's query on that issue with Mr. Petraeus's recent
Chairman.
article. With that, next, Mr. Diaz-Balart.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And to all of you, thank you for your service. And, you know, you don't have to remind us, but it's important to remind, I think, the American people how indispensable and you are to our national security. You know, without you, we don't have the military that the American people expect. And I just, it's so important to just remind people, and other members of Congress as well. General Haley, you have served for what, 37 years? 37 years. And by the way, my understanding is that you're going to be probably the only person that's not moving to Florida. But you know, you would be welcome there. You would be welcome there. I just, you mentioned, I think it was answering a question about the potential transition to F-35s, for example, in Homestead Air Force. But I don't need to go into the details now. I just do need to take a short time, you know, to thank you for you know, you in the time that I've had the privilege of knowing you. You really are so in tune to some details that some people may not be aware of. And part of that example is your intimate knowledge of what Homestead Base means to our national security. So again, I don't need an answer from you. I just wanted to let you know again that that I appreciate not only your service but your detailed knowledge. And you mentioned that you've been on this case for a long time, and I think you know, God willing, that will succeed. But I just, again, not only want to thank you for your service, but the fact that those who may not know you as well need to understand that very few people have been as persistent, but as knowledgeable, including about some areas that some people may not be so knowledgeable about. So again, while you may not go to Florida, just know that you have somebody who greatly admires your service and in not just on the, not an Air Force pun, not on the 40,000 level, but also on the detail level. So thank you, sir. Thank all of you. And with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for a yield back.
You're already taking all our Californians, so you gotta limit that. Next, Mr. Case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I join everybody in thanking each and all of you for your incredible service. General Healy, I share all of the sentiments. I think among many accomplishments, you've just been a really good partner with Congress. I think that's a skill to treat this as a true partnership, and you've done that, and maybe that can be one of your next jobs is consulting on partnering with Congress, assuming you want to have anything to do with us. And to each and all of you, thanks so much for taking care and advocating so effectively, especially for my Hawaii Guard and reservists. I think they would say that if they were here. Many of you have visited. Really appreciate that. And I think to Chair Cole's comments about your service in our states in time of need, I think back to the 3 or 4 crises we've had in Hawaii just over the last 4 or 5 years. COVID, of course, Red Hill, the Maui wildfires, and more recently, some very severe flooding. You've been involved in a critical part in all of that. So that needs to be emphasized also is your readiness in those times of need. So I thank you for that. We're sorting through kind of a confusing budget right now. We have been presented with a very large budget with insufficient detail, and that budget is conflated as between discretionary and a proposed reconciliation funding. We've been trying to sort through the overall thinking of the department, the individual services, and the individual components in terms of what is allocated to each of those buckets and why. And I'm noting that in the case of the Guard and the Reserves, there's not a whole bunch of proposed reconciliation funding. And we've talked a lot about DEGREA and procurement lines here. We all acknowledge the importance of that. But how are we actually getting after that in funding? That's really the bottom line question here. And I'm just trying to piece through the little information that we have already. And I don't think that there's any FY27 proposed reconciliation mandatory funding for any of you, with the exception of the Navy. Reserve equipment, I see aircraft procurement at $1.19 billion proposed in the mandatory side of things. Admiral, do you know what that's for and why it's in reconciliation as opposed? And by the way, you've got a big lump there as well, 1.755 billion in the discretionary budget. But why are you loading some of that into reconciliation, and what is it?
Congressman Case, I appreciate the question. As I look at the president's budget and looking at the two pieces, I view that as two bills, one budget is the way that I see that. With regards to replacement of C-130s for us, it remains our most critical requirement for the Navy. It is our only intra-theater long-range transport to both rearm, resupply, and refuel the fleet. It's the only aircraft that will deliver oversized cargo in theater. And right now, it's actually performing in-flight aerial refueling, which is a critical component for us. Those aircraft right now are 35 years old. They have mission capability rates in the 30%. The new models of Juliets, they've got better survivability. They've got better communications, integrated systems that really will allow us to fly farther, faster, and higher, and provide a greater degree of survivability for those crews.
Okay, so that's C-130 replacement. Is that what that line is there?
I'll take that question for the record.
Okay, and in addition to the question, why the distinction between discretionary and reconciliation? Is that a contingency plan in terms of congressional funding, or is that phased, or what? That's a rhetorical question for now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and also I'm just noting here in the budget, and this is on the discretionary side, I'm seeing procurement of ammunition, Navy and Marine Corps. Is that in your, and it's listed under Guard and Reserve. So is that you, and what kind of ammunition are we talking about? Is that related at all to the Iran war, or is that a normal replenishment, or what?
Sir, I can only speak to the specificity around the reserve. I'm not familiar with the details, but I'll work with your staff and take that as a follow-up, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to each of you gentlemen, I had the privilege of meeting and greeting with each and every one of you today and your staffs. Profound thanks. Your questions, your testimony today has been impeccable. To the reserve and guardsmen in the officer and enlisted ranks, thank you so much for what you do every day, crisis after crisis. My questions are going to be largely really to all of you all on the logistics and sustainment in the Indo-Pacific. As you've all laid out, reserve components in the National Guard play a critical role in the Joint Forces logistics and sustainment enterprise, including aerial refueling, strategic lift, fuel distribution, ground support, water purification, and other critical needs. My question for each of you, for the panel, what is the highest priority need for each of you so that we can realistically address in the next couple of years that will meaningfully improve your logistics and capabilities to sustained, prolonged combat operations in the Western Pacific? And we can just go in whatever order you all determine.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate the question. While we have, the NDS directs us to look at Western Hemisphere Command as well, we are laser focused on what's going on in the Indo-Pacific. When you look at the size of the space that you have to move around out there, my CSM and I were just out there not that long ago, Korea, Guam, Hawaii, met with some of our troopers out there. I tell you, our investment continues to be, we continue to provide the bulk of the sustainment capability forward. Bulk fuel operations, water purification, ammunition resupply companies. And so continuing to invest in the modernization of that kit is critical to us. And then probably affording us the opportunity to position that forward, and we're working with the COCOM and the Army Service, the ASCC out there, USERPAC, but that's the critical mission for us in the Indo-PACOM AOR.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman, I appreciate the question around the Indo-Pacific. When I look at Indo-PACOM, the one thing that hasn't changed since the end of World War II is geography. We're still wrought with the tyranny of distance. These vast distances, they're still the same challenges, and they still define how we fight today. But what's changed is the threat, and we have to operate across that same expanse in a contested environment where, when you think about it, survivability, speed, and flexibility matter more than ever. So for us, that KC-130 Juliet's critically important. It provides us the only service-retained capability, the ability to operate from those short, austere runways all across the Pacific. And those aircraft provide additional operational performance. Again, as I mentioned, greater distances, faster and higher, critically important, and it also provides a greater degree of, I would say, fiscal responsibility with regards to operating those aircraft. They're more efficient as well, too. And that's survivability and integration of comms. When I think about Link 16, we think about the ACE gear and the integrated communication suites that those Juliets provide. It creates a greater degree of survivability for our air crews as they're flying in there.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman, for the National Guard, we look at probably the number one is tankers. So 14 of our 17 tanker units are in the KC-135. So those need to be, modernized as we go into the future. Concurrently with our Air Force. As we look at also connecting those platforms through INGRIA funds and other things that we do to make sure those platforms are connected in that vast Indo-PACOM theater. And then certainly thank you to Congress on the C-130Js as we finish out, hopefully get to all Js here in the future. And then certainly any modernization that we can do with INGRIA and the C-17 to make sure it's connected as well on that platform for that theater.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman, as you know, the Marine Corps is focused on the amphibious nature of the fight, understanding our role in that AOR, and we're certainly keeping an eye on amphibious ship readiness, and look forward to the landing ship medium coming online and coming forward. For us as a Marine Corps Reserve, for our individual Marine, we are committed to the light tactical vehicle family. That includes JLTV and ULTV. I'm concerned that the price may increase as the Army has pulled out of that program. So as a service for the Marine Corps, we're focused on staying committed to that program. It's going to move everything, not only our Marines, but our Nemesis missiles, TPS-80s, other kit that we have for the mobility on the island chain. So our number one focus will be getting those JLTVs to the reserve so I can have those Marines trained and ready to go when they do get into the first island chain.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I agree with General Nordhaus with regard to the air refuelers as being our number one priority in the theater. Using our INGRIA dollars to make sure they got beyond line of sight communication, ensuring they got LARCOM as the defensive system as well. Converting to KC-46 as well so that we can use it as a force multiplier. I'd also add that continuing exercises as a reserve component with the active component to ensure that we're completely interoperable in every type of O-plan excursion. And then lastly, the Air Force Reserve has a significant presence with our civil engineering, and the ability to get out there and actually set the theater prior is one of our priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and gentlemen, thank all of you for your service to our country, and a special good wishes to you, General, and your wife as you enter the next phase of your service in your life. I want to start, if I can, General Nordhaus. I serve at have two responsibilities here, the intersection of both which come together around a question I want to ask you. I serve not only appropriations, but as the ranking member on the Committee on House Administration, which has responsibility for federal elections. The president raised eyebrows a couple months ago when he said he regretted not deploying the National Guard during the 2020 election. As you can imagine, that has caused considerable anxiety around the country, millions of Americans concerned about the potential deployment of military personnel at election centers or at precincts throughout the country in the midterm elections. What assurances can you give not only to me, but the millions of Americans who have those concerns about the deployment of National Guard at polling places?
Congressman, the National Guard obviously always follows Constitution, law, policy, and guidance, both at the federal and the state level. Now, the National Guard has been utilized by governors really back in the 2020 and 2022 timeframe due to COVID-19, and it was due to a lack of volunteers. And so Guardsmen had in multiple states done things in administration, logistics, and cyber, but they were always in civilian clothes to my knowledge, and they were always in support so that those state polling stations could execute and our citizens could vote as normal. And so as we go forward, you know that the National Guard is always going to follow the law, the Constitution, and all policy and guidance, and we're there to increase public trust and make sure that our citizens have the ability to do their duty of voting.
Good. Well, I appreciate that, and I would love to stay in touch with you if anything untoward seems to be happening or any concerns are raised by people that they see warning signs that would suggest some non-traditional participation by the Guard in our national elections. But I do appreciate that and just want to raise it with you. If I could continue on a more traditional topic, General, as you know, the 109th Airlift Wing of the New York Air National Guard, and you and I have talked about this and always appreciate your stopping by the office and chatting, but it provides the military's only ski-equipped airlift capability supporting critical operations in the Arctic and the Antarctic. The missions have become increasingly important as polar regions take on greater strategic significance. The President and others have talked about it in global power competition. And the LC-130 fleet is aging. I know I've shared this with you before. I wonder if you could give me an update on the strategic value of the 109th Polar Mission and how we can recapitalize the LC-130 fleet, enhance their operational capabilities, and align with broader national security priorities.
Congressman Morell, I actually went to the South Pole on New York's LC-130s. Incredible aircraft as they upgraded to different props and the capabilities with the H models that they have. That capability to be able to have C-130s, whether it's in the southern, South Pole or whether it's in the Arctic, is going to be critical going forward. We appreciate everything Congress does to move us in that direction and look forward to working with the Air Force in this body to make sure that that capability remains strong, and as we go into the future, it transforms at the appropriate time.
Very good, sir. And in my last minute, in 2021, General, 3 highly experienced New York Army National Guard pilots, Chief Warrant Officer Steve Skoda, Chief Warrant Officer Daniel Priel, and Chief Warrant Officer Christian Koch, were tragically lost in a helicopter crash during a night training flight in my district. A stark reminder of the inherent risks in rotary wing training and operations. Any lessons learned from these incidents being incorporated into updated training protocols, simulator use, or crew coordination that we should know about?
Congressman, let me just start off by, I'm a longtime aviator, not only flying F-16s and F-35s, but flying for a major airline. And I have a son flying this morning, called me last night. He's doing a cross country because he's getting his pilot license. And you can believe I'm talking safety all the time. This last week, I had the team in from both the Air National Guard and the Army National Guard. I do it quarterly to make sure we're looking at all the safety across the board. I'm happy to report that the National Guard, the Army National Guard, has had no Class A's in 25 or 26. It is a major focus of both the Army National Guard and the Air National Guard and across aviation that we have to learn these lessons from safety. We have to put them out. So they're doing stand-ups on a regular basis to make sure that they're taking lessons learned from incidents that have happened recently and ones that have happened years ago. So as they do these stand-ups, they can talk and they can remind even the newest pilots of how a little bit of loss in concentration or not understanding how something might affect the safety of their flight comes into play, and it makes them better and more safe. And I'm seeing on the ground safety and on the air safety, both for Air National Guard and Army National Guard, the trends are down and going in the right direction.
Very good. Thank you again, gentlemen, and to the men and women who serve with you. Appreciate your service to our country. I'll yield back, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Elzey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. Before I get started with my comments and questions, I'd like to thank Kathy Healy. The unsung heroes of all of these men in front of you are the families. You have carried the water for your husband and your family for nearly 40 years, if not more, and you never get the recognition. There should be a medal that equals the Medal of Honor for spouses, especially spouses of generals who have dealt with a lot over the years. And I just want to say thank you and put it on the record that we recognize your sacrifice over these years. And I think I see a tear streaming down from General Healy's eyes. But God bless you, and God bless all the families of members of the service members. To the senior enlisted advisors sitting behind the men with the stars, you carry the water for the training and excellence of the National Guard and Reserve, and I thank you as well. It is, if you don't know how important we think you are, we were up till 3 o'clock last night voting, and this is probably the first time I've seen the entire panel up here with all the members of Defense Appropriations here at once, to include the chair of the overall committee and the ranker. So we take what you do very seriously. And as Tom Cole said, we shortchange the Guard and Reserve. And that's always evident when we go into conflict, because whoever has to clean up whatever mess that wasn't planned for is covered by you and your services, and you do so with professionalism and expertise that doesn't exist in the active duty. So whenever there's a mess that's been made, we go to the experts, which is why you should, I believe, have the best of everything we have. You should have the newest of everything we have, because every pilot that you've got in your respective units, they're the ones that have 3,000 hours as opposed to the newest pilots in the active duty. And I think that getting the newest of everything is extremely important. When the F-47 comes out, I think the reserve should get the second squadron. When the MV-75 comes out, I think that the reserve should get the second squadron, because you're going to work it out in ways that only those experts have that stick with it. And as far as, keeping lines hot, we're about to find out in the Navy, we're going to have, for the first time in 7 decades, no aircraft coming off the line that are fighter aircraft. Starting next fall, we won't have a hot line. We're going to transition from the Super Hornet to the FA-XX, but with a 3-year gap of new, that can't be allowed to happen. So when it comes to the Army, we know that you operate within a budget constraint, but we should keep the line hot for the H-60. The H-60 is not going away ever. It's going to always have areas that it's going to be needed, even as the MV-75 comes online, which is not necessarily a replacement, it's just another category. So they're both needed, and I hope they continue. With respect to tanking, I would say that we need to emphasize more on contract air services domestically, so that when we do have a need for you all and the active component to do tanking, whether it's the Navy's C-130Js, which suddenly, the stuff that we have allocated, this panel's allocated through our appropriations bills, you're using right now, is that correct?
They've been appropriate. We're not flying the Juliets yet, sir, but they're coming online in another year and a half.
But you're giving gas in a way that wasn't part of the plan.
Yes, sir. The KC-130 Tangos are pushing gas right now to carrier strike groups that are operating, just right outside the Red Sea and off the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah. In PSAB, we lost some of those, and I think some of those were reserve tankers. And so when it comes down to combat, fighters are sexy, but you don't do anything without tankers. Whenever I would do a 7-hour mission in Afghanistan, I would tank 5 times. I can't do a 7-hour mission in those faraway lands, no matter if you're Air Force or Navy, without the tankers. And suddenly, when the war gets going, people go, "Where are the tankers?" And we never have enough. So we need to reallocate those. as quickly as we can. So I think most of the questions have been covered here today. You know, you join the military because you love your country and you want to protect her. That's number one. It's a servant's heart. It's not to be a warrior, it's to be a protector. Sometimes that requires going to war and becoming a warrior. There's a cost to that. And in the active duty component, we do that knowing what we're going to do. We decide to stay in and serve for a career or not. What I think sets you guys apart is you all have another life. You've all done something different. You are all experts in another field. You love this country so much that you've decided to keep the uniform on. And I think that it bears noting that for all of the people in uniform here, they have another life and they are continuing to sacrifice for the betterment of our country. And when we're talking about protecting this city, and I know that it does cause some hard feelings, but the National Guard is a protector first. Where there is no order, it provides order. And they do so with the heart of protecting our communities. So when they are here, that's what their goal is. And I know that there's some hard feelings about it. But the reality is that I see these young men and women walking around down at the wharf near where I live. They're the nicest people on the planet. They have other jobs. They have families that they're sacrificing time with to keep order, and they've done a good job. But as we've seen last weekend down at the Navy Yard, order is still needed as the entire community was overrun, where most of our staffers live. That is a scary thing for them. So I'm glad they're here and providing that order, but I also know that it's an impact on the community. But I want to thank everybody who's doing that right now, and for those of you who provide those forces, I'm deeply grateful. And I've gone way over. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I associate myself with the comments from the eloquent Mr. Elzey and General Healy and Mrs. Healy. I'm wishing you all the best and thank you for your career of service to our country. I wanted to, being from the West, when I think about National Guard, I think about wildfires. And General, you know, we have a contingent of airmen from the 152nd Airlift Wing in Reno, that the high rollers who have been deployed to Central Command. And I just wanted to ask General Nordhaus if those guardsmen remain deployed. This has been a record year of no snowpack in the West, and I think one concern we have is preparation for what I believe will be a record wildfire year, and very concerning to me. What are the contingency plans, you know, if they remain deployed throughout the summer and we see a wildfire breakout, especially in the Sierras?
Congresswoman Lee, thank you for the question. Yeah, our National Guard does 3 of the 4 units of the mobile airborne firefighting systems. They do amazing work. I actually landed and was in California as they launched for the first missions on the Palisade fires, and they all came out to be able to do that. All 8 of the aircraft and systems were put in place. So as we work with NIFC and with the department, we'll continue to watch that very closely and make sure that we have the right aircraft in the right place to get after and serve our nation, to make sure that we can take care of those wildfires within our department and, of course, the Forest Service as well.
Thank you. Speaking of equipment, the Nevada Air National Guard Base has been fighting for years to recapitalize the C-130Hs, which would be helpful to its ability to continue to fight wildfires. And I understand that one of the points against the Nevada National Guard is deficient infrastructure to house the C-130Js. And there's 4 infrastructure projects that have been identified as critical, but only one has the documentation to move forward. And I just want to ask if I can receive your commitment to work with me to advocate for the funding for the infrastructure needed to put the Nevada Air National Guard in a position to receive these C-130Js.
Congressman Lee, will certainly work with Nevada and the incredible wings. I've been to both your wings and was recently down with General Waters down in Las Vegas as well. And I talked to General Pirak about the criteria. We do have MOB 12, which will be the stationing of another C-130J And so we look forward to Nevada competing very strongly and working with your state.
Thank you, I appreciate that. When we speak about the deployment to Epic Fury, I know that there are a lot of young people who've been deployed right now who have never been deployed before. And General Healy, we spoke about this when you came to my office yesterday. We talked about the Yellow Ribbon Reintegration Program. And I guess this is for all the witnesses. I'll start with you, General Healy. What steps are we taking now to prepare to help these reservists and guardsmen when they return home?
Thanks for the question, ma'am, and appreciate the time yesterday. What we try to do up front is routine training just to make sure the resiliency is built up in all of our members going overseas. When they do deploy, they fall on the same healthcare system, mental health care system that the active duty enjoys overseas. This is a little bit different than in previous years. We haven't exercised the muscles, so to speak, to capture people coming back that have been exposed to a TLAM strike within a few hundred yards. As we have young people over there, what we're initially trying to do is ensure that they're paired up with somebody a little bit more experienced. And with that experience, I would expect resilience. But when they come back, we're very concerned that we meet them appropriately from the first part of embarkation to identify if there are any issues that they need specifically addressing. When we do bring them back into our units, we want to ensure if it's a classic associate and it's got a medical treatment facility associated with the active duty, that they're prepared as well to treat any type of mental after effects from being deployed. But the Yellow Ribbon Program ultimately is going to be what's providing that long-term care, not only for them, but for their families. We're watching that very closely. Again, we haven't been exposed to this type of conflict in quite a bit, so we're concerned about it as well.
Thank you. Thank you. My time is up. I imagine all of you have the same type of concern. Thank you all for your service.
Thank you. This is the Money Committee, and so I'm going to talk money here for just a minute. And General Nordhaus, the topic is state active duty reimbursement. And I know you're well-versed on it. And I want my colleagues around the dais who aren't familiar with this issue to understand it better, because we need to fix it. If we truly care about these reservists, this is an issue that needs to be fixed. But they're double taxed when they're aiding our communities in response to an emergency. States reimburse the Guard for the services, but due to the Miscellaneous Receipts Act, a non-federal funding source paying a federal agency causes the funds to be deposited back in the Treasury, not in the Guard accounts. The Guard Bureau never sees that money. And then on the backside, the Guard still has to pay for the maintenance of that equipment. So in Arkansas, this played out not long ago when soldiers from our Fires Brigade, our Expeditionary Combat Aviation Brigade, our Infantry Brigade, all in response to a winter storm, operated 66 federal vehicles in support of emergency services, the Arkansas State Police, and the state reimbursed the federal government about $20,000 for that equipment use. But instead of that money going to maintaining those vehicles, it's now sitting in the Treasury's general fund. That doesn't seem very wise to me. And it's not just in Arkansas, it's playing out all across the country. General Nordhaus, can you elaborate on just how much of an issue this is to the already constrained budget of our Guard?
Congressman Womack, first off, thanks for allowing me to visit Arkansas last week. Amazing time there and for our office call. You talked about the 15 states in the western with the winter storm, but we also have Hawaii going on right now with their flooding, and Guam is now responding to the typhoon. Wisconsin right now has storms up there, and so they have guardsmen responding. So each one of these across the 54, it happens every year. These funds go to the Treasury instead of back into the Guard units so that we can get the equipment back up to speed. So when the next winter storm happens or the next flood or tornado or hurricane or event, that we can respond quickly, we're ready, and we're there for you. And without that, we're losing, those funds are going to other things that we can't keep the equipment up to speed where it needs to be.
Yeah. I was going to ask a question about INGREA, but I just want to say this because I got another question on another topic that's more important to me right now, and that is, for the first time, Mr. Chairman, it pleases me to know that the administration has asked for the $1 billion in the INGREA accounts. Usually I have to rely on the Pentagon to make that request and fund it. And there was one year, it wasn't very long ago, if you remember, one year they wiped out the entire INGREA account for another purpose. So this INGREA account is, while only $1 billion, and I say only $1 billion, like that's not a significant, it is a significant amount of money. But over time, we haven't been able to keep up with inflation, and so that's reducing really the actual purchase power, if you will, of that particular account. But how important it is INGREA to the overall service?
Congressman, you've heard from everyone on this table that INGREA is the lifeblood of our modernization so that we can be interoperable when we get called to go do Epic Fury or any other mission sets. And we do it innovatively. Our Air National Guard, Air Force Reserve Test Center really gets 80% of the capabilities at 20% of the cost. So every dollar that goes into INGREA is really a huge force multiplier for the National Guard and the Reserve component to be interoperable with our services.
I would like for that account to be somewhat indexed, if you will, in its request for inflationary pressures. That, to me, would be very important. Last question, Combat Training Center rotations. We talked about this yesterday with the Army, with Secretary Driscoll and General Leneve. And I know one of our Arkansas units has taken a spot, volunteered to take a spot in a CTC rotation. General Nordhaus, can you share how important these CTC rotations are in building foundational readiness and help the Guard be that operational force that we so desperately need?
Congressman, yes. Last year I went to Fort Polk for JRTC and out to Fort Irwin for NTC. This is where our units are getting that complex training environment across the board to be able to pull that all together. And so each one of these rotations are critical to National Guard's readiness for mission sets that we might get asked to do, or are part of a gift map rotation, a global force management rotation in the future. And so it gets our units ready to go so that they can go forward. So they're critical to our readiness.
Yeah, and Arkansas is, our brigade, our infantry brigade is one of the units that's going to transition from the infantry structure to the mobile structure, a little less force structure. But even with that, I think these CTC rotations are quite important. I had other questions I'll ask for the record. Did you want to respond to that?
Congressman, if I can just add one piece. One other thing that we do at NTCs and JRTCs is we bring our state partnership partners with us. And so both of those, the units that were forward deployed had their state partners with them. You know, that's 60% of the globe are partnered with a National Guard state, territory, or the District of Columbia. And thank you to Congress for the additional funds for that state partnership program.
Great point. Remember, we talked about that SPP being a two-way street. Helps them, helps us. There's mutual benefit to it. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Joyce.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Lieutenant General Healy, I appreciate your partnership as the Youngstown Air Reserve Station transitions to the new C-130J. This modernization effort is critical for the 910th Airlift Wing, which operates the department's only fixed-wing aerial spray mission. Can you discuss how this modernization enhances our ability to respond to national disasters and evolving threats?
Sure, and thank you very much for the question. The 910th is a fantastic wing. It's one of those true bases where when you get the opportunity to visit it, it's a self-contained wonder. Fantastic people working that mission for years in the only spray system that serves the entire country, whether it's pesticide control, whether it's oil slicks. This current system that they were using under the H models has been effective for years. As we transition right now from H models to Js, we also have to transition that MAS system to an EMAS system. There's delays right now currently in the J model production and delivery to Youngstown, and there's also delays with regard to certification and availability of the new EMAS system. We're going to run into a bit of a gap, I'd predict, next year in 27, where we're going to be stuck with only one potential spray system to service the country. And I think that's uncomfortable risk with regard to the mission set that they provide. I'll be working ideally with Congress and the Air Force to try to extend 1 to 2 of our H models from divesting prior to the J models getting there. Unfortunately, the legacy version of the spray system is not compatible with the new J models. So in order to maintain proper coverage, we're going to be looking for a slight extension of at least 1 to 2 H models until the end of September timeframe of 27, when we expect 2 to 3 EMAS and J production on time again, sir.
Thank you. General Nordhaus, in your written testimony, you made note that over 400 Guard cyber professionals were activated in 2025 to respond to network intrusions against state and local governments. You described the Guard as a cornerstone of a whole of the state cybersecurity strategy. Can you discuss how that cybersecurity collaboration works on the ground and what investments Congress can make to help strengthen those partnerships in FY27?
Thanks, Congressman. Right now I talked about in Minnesota with Winona County, their emergency management system was taken over and they pushed the Guard 16 or 15 soldiers out there. And what might take months, sounds like talking with the Adjutant General, it's going to take weeks. It's going to take a little bit of time, but they're on it. The National Guard has, on the Air National Guard, 16 cyber protection teams, 11 on the Army National Guard side. And so those cyber professionals, because they're guardsmen, right, they work out in industry, they bring those civilian skill sets in, they're the pros out there that are working for industry, and then they come in and with the tool sets that department gives them, now you have this incredible capability there. So our guardsmen need to have the same authorities as we go across, and think about that from state active duty to Title 32 authorities and then to Title 10, so that however they're used and whatever authority that they can best help the community secure and respond within the homeland for critical infrastructure, but can also do homeland defense as cyber protection teams.
I can't agree with you more. We need to get more involved, and that's one area that, unfortunately, with CISA, we continue to cut or not provide the information. And when I brought CISA to my district and had a hearing, I was amazed at the amount of schools and hospitals and other areas that have been attacked already, and we're not doing much to help or provide that effort at a local level.
Yes, Congressman, and I'm going to brag on the Guard members. This is not about me, it's about our Guards member, but 5 out of the last 6 championships have been won by these National Guard teams because they have these skill sets and they go back and forth across on that. And we have a huge exercise, Cyber Shield, coming up with, I believe, can't remember the exact number, but I think it's 22 states, and then they're also bringing in their state partners across the board from 16 or 17 nations. So we're not only helping within the U.S., but now also taking that partnership capacity in cyber out to our partner nations.
That's something to brag about. Quickly, though, I don't have much time left. What could we do for you to help enhance those efforts?
I talked about authorities, so just making sure that the Guard has the authorities needed to be able to, if a governor needs them to come out and be able to be on equipment and help the state, that they have those authorities to be able to execute it in the tool sets. And then from that standpoint, also making sure that we have funding in the budget to grow cyber.
There we go.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments, and I'll ask Ms. McCollum to make comments before we conclude. Mr. Elsie mentioned, and it's true, that we have a fighter problem. Obviously, the F-18 line is shutting down. Probably shouldn't have done that, but we did. The F-16s are old that you have. The F-15s you have are old. Probably a question both for Mr. Norhaus and for Mr. Healy, General Healy. How critical is it that we get these fighter production numbers up in order to make sure that you have adequate aircraft to fly the mission that we count on in the future? I'll start with you, General.
Chairman, I just take a look at the Aerospace Control Alert mission set that's done. 94% are the fighters across the United States are covered by Air National Guard units. Many of those are flying older F-16 aircraft, and so they need to be modernized as we get into the future. They have strong capabilities now, but as we get to the future and new threats, we have to make sure that we recapitalize our fighters.
Yes, sir, and the challenge we've dealt with is we're going to see by the end of the fight up 9.6% of the fighter force within the Air Force Reserve is going to decrease to about 3%. So we're seeing as we diminish and retire aircraft like the A-10, rightfully so, the challenge is there's not enough production. So to directly answer your question, we need those production levels to increase so that we're available to retain that talent. One of the examples from Mr. Elzey's comments was last year we had we were taking positions who were interested in an F-35 unit. We received 200 qualified applications for 6 positions in that F-35 unit. So that's the function of if we're in the proper aircraft, if we got the proper production, that's a return on investment for a highly trained, well-trained active duty force for much cheaper in the Reserve and Guard going forward.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, as a Marine fighter pilot, if I could chime in on that, because it is important to us as well as we transition to the F-35C here in the coming years. Our last deployment of the F-18 is going to happen in this next fiscal year into the first island chain. So we are certainly keeping an eye on fighter production.
Thank you. I'm going to thank you for coming here today. We depend on the Guard and Reserve for what you do, service to our country. We appreciate that very much. General Healy, Mrs. Healy, thank you both for your service. I hope the best for you in the future. I'll miss you at these hearings. We'll be around, though. But now I'll thank you again, and I'll recognize Ms. McCollum for any closing remarks.
Thank you, and I want to thank you, Lieutenant General Anderson, for stepping up and saying something, because this is part of my closing remarks. The AGREA funding for profile for the Marine Corps is not good, and I'm just going to put this out on the table. Marine Corps Reserve's AGREA funding profile has historically been the lowest of all the service components. The Marine reservists receive substantially less funding than their counterparts in the other services. This has put a long-standing trend into perspective. Let me give you some figures. The funding's around $464 per Marine. It's not just the lowest of any of the components, but a significant detachment from the next lowest funded service, which is the Army Reserve, which receives about $788 per soldier, over 70% more per person than the Marines reservists. You play an important role. You just mentioned the part that deals with flight, but I'm going to task you with some homework. We need to make sure that there's parity. Marines will always go into the fight with what they have, but we need to make sure that there's parity in what they have, especially as we look at the AGREA accounts. Mr. Joyce brought up cyber, which is hugely important, and I think some information on what you're all doing on cyber would be helpful for this committee, especially as the Department of Homeland is cutting what it's doing. It's putting more and more, not pressure, because you're ready to do the job, but it's putting more activity at the cyber guard level. We had 2 attacks in Minnesota this year. First responders were affected with it, and they work seamlessly with our civilian components in the municipalities and counties, but they can't do it alone. These attacks are getting more aggressive. The third thing I'd point out, Mr. Chair, is, when the equipment was coming back to the Guard and the Reserve after Afghanistan and Iraq, one of the things that we asked in this committee was a real good profile on. We know it's not going to come back the same way, but we were asking for it to come back in pretty good shape so it was ready to go. And this is going to be true again as we're deploying this equipment. And as you pointed out, sometimes is much older equipment that we were on a list to replace, and it's not being replaced fast enough. And then you have equipment turning around, coming back, not in the same shape it left home with. So we look forward to working with you. And once again, thank you. Congratulations on service well done. We appreciate it. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady, and thank you. Thank you to all our witnesses. This concludes today's hearing. The subcommittee stands adjourned.